Good morning, everyone. Students, alumni, and friends, welcome to our event, Tomorrow's Jobs, Law, and Entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Alain Roussy, and I'm the Interim Dean of the Faculty of Law, Common Law section. I'm also a uOttawa Common Law grad, having completed both my LLB, as the JD used to be called, in 2002, and my LLM in 2012. This morning, as you know, we are thrilled to be joined by e-commerce visionary Harley Finkelstein. Harley is also a proud uOttawa alumnus. He completed his JD with us and his MBA with the Telfer School of Management, both in 2009. Today's event is a result of a collaboration led by our students, and I would like to extend my thanks to the following groups: the Tax Law Society and the Business Law Society, and also to the event committee, which includes our own Common Law section and the Telfer School of Management, with the support of the Jewish Law Students Association, the MBA Students Association, the Ottawa Legal Innovation Hub, and the Common Law Student Society. I want to particularly acknowledge two law students, Arjun Gupta and Adriana Conti, who have been instrumental in bringing this event to you today. Thank you to all those involved, students, faculty, and our staff, for making this event possible. As interim dean, I am proud to be at the helm of the Common Law section, where we strive to give our students the opportunity to not only explore the various avenues of the legal profession, but also to discover their own entrepreneurial spirit through law, because we know that the next generation of lawyers will need to be nimble to face the challenges of a changing legal profession. I want to thank you, Harley, our guest of honor today, for being with us and sharing your insights on the happy marriage of law and entrepreneurship. I would now like to introduce Stéphane Brutus, Dean of the University of Ottawa's Telfer School of Management. Stéphane.
Merci, Alain. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here today as the Dean of the Telfer School of Management at the University of Ottawa. The vision that I have for Telfer is simple, and it is reflected by our distinguished guest today. And that vision is that Telfer is only as strong as the bridges it creates. So Telfer is a partner. It's a partner with the Faculty of Engineering in our Masters of Engineering Management. It's a partner with the Faculty of Arts, with the Digital Technology Innovation Masters and PhD program. And it's a partner with our prestigious Faculty of Law, with the BCom JD and the JD MBA, which brings me back to our distinguished guest. So it is with great pleasure that I'm here to introduce our guest of honor, Mr. Harley Finkelstein, University of Ottawa Common Law and Telfer alumnus and President of Shopify, who will be in conversation today with Arjun Gupta, the President of the Tax Law Society. So off to you, Arjun.
Well, thank you, Dean, and I will do another quick round of acknowledgements before jumping right in. Of course, nothing is possible without the support of a dedicated team, and I want to acknowledge again our incredible Tax Law Society and Business Law Society teams, and the rest of our event committee, Adriana, Elliot, Krishna, Michelle, and Ocean, our production team, Jen and Veronique, and of course, our teams from the Law School and Telfer School, Louise and Colin. All right, Harley, welcome to the University of Ottawa. This is your second time, third time?
This is my third time doing this, yeah, third time.
Awesome. And for the 2 or 3 people here who don't already know your story, can you give us that 60-second version, and then we can start to rebuild from your time at uOttawa to where you are today?
Sure. So my name is Harley Finkelstein. I was born in Montreal in Quebec. I lived there until I was about 12. At that point, my family moved to South Florida. So I went to middle school and high school in South Florida. I went back to Montreal to go to McGill when I was 17, and effectively had to become an entrepreneur to support my family. But I've always sort of self-identified as an entrepreneur from a very early stage. But it was really when I got to McGill where entrepreneurship for me became this incredible tool to solve problems. And now I get to do it at this incredible scale with more than 2 million entrepreneurs on Shopify today. So I'm skipping a big chunk because I assume we're going to go through it. But yeah, I'm an entrepreneur at heart.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm going to actually start from your time at law school, your JD MBA class of 2009, I believe.
I think I graduated law school in 08 and then MBA in 09.
Perfect. So let's go back to 0809. This was 2 years after the first iPhone launched. No one was thinking about running a business off their phone. And of course, it was a year after the financial crisis, very challenging economy, much like today. And against that backdrop, you did your articles in Toronto, I believe, for 10 months. And then you said, hey, law isn't for me. And you went down another path. And of course, today you're applying your legal training and business training at Shopify. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about that and how your UO education impacted your current success.
Yeah. Well, like everything else, I feel like I've used the term entrepreneurship already like 5 times, but I'll use it again. I took a different approach, I think, to school than most people did. And I would encourage all of you to think about your own studies slightly differently than I think what may be more traditional. I looked at both law school and business school as effectively finishing school for being an entrepreneur. I mentioned earlier that I went to McGill for undergrad. It was 2001. I was 17. I was a kid. My dad was no longer around. My mom and sisters basically had no more money. And I used this tool called entrepreneurship and built a t-shirt business and sold t-shirts to universities across Canada all throughout my undergrad. When I was finishing university, I ended up actually switching to Concordia because by my 3rd and 4th year of undergrad, the t-shirt business had really grown quite a bit. I think there were about 98, or at least there were at the time, 98 accredited universities in Canada. And by the end of, by year 3 of undergrad, something like 30 or 40 of those schools were buying t-shirts and bags and hats from my small little company. And I always had really good mentors in my life. But one mentor in particular named Philip Reimer, who was a lawyer here in Ottawa, Denton's. He's been incredibly foundational in my life. He's been a mentor since I was a kid. He convinced me that my t-shirt business, although it was making good money for an 18 or 19-year-old, allowed my sisters to go to private school. I was able to afford that for them. I was able to pay my mother's rent. That my t-shirt business had no competitive advantage, that there was no moat around the business. So that in the same way that I had disrupted other t-shirt and promotional product suppliers in the procurement process previously, someone eventually would disrupt me as well. And Phil had convinced me to go to law school, not to become a lawyer, but rather to become a better entrepreneur. And Phil happened to be teaching part-time in 2005 at FOTE at the Common Law section at University of Ottawa. And so he said, why don't you apply to the University of Ottawa? And that's kind of how it happened. I applied to like one law school. It was only University of Ottawa Law. And I went basically to follow Phil there. And when I got here, I didn't have any friends or family here. I was very fortunate to meet a group of entrepreneurs. One of them was Toby, the founder of Shopify, and that's how we got connected. But more importantly, around your specific question around my time in school, my approach was incredibly selfish. How can I get the most out of this? It was effectively cost benefit. It was, I'm going to pay the University of Ottawa whatever it was, $15,000, and that's the cost. The cost is also the opportunity cost, my time, because my t-shirt business at the time was making, it wasn't a multi-million-dollar company, but it was making, good money, especially for a 21-year-old, which is what I was in my first year of law school. It was more money than any of my friends had in their bank account. So that was cool. So the opportunity cost plus the $15,000 tuition was that cost worth the benefit of the education. And because I looked at it like that, I looked at it more transactionally. I felt that the university and the school owed me something. It owed me an education in writing, in speaking, in debate, and critical reasoning. It owed me, anyone in law school that's watching, the idea of reading a couple hundred pages and pulling out that single ratio decidendi is a very valuable tactic and a very valuable skill set. And that's how I looked at the entirety of my law school education. To be honest with you, I wasn't I don't think I was well liked by my classmates. Some of them are still my closest friends, but I've gone back to some reunions and stuff, and almost to a T, a lot of them have come up to me and said, hey, in law school, like, we just didn't understand you. And I was like, well, why? Like, I wasn't that difficult to understand. And it was because I wasn't trying to get the job at the big, one of the big sister firms, one of the big corporate law firms. I was truly just trying to selfishly take as much skill set as I could out of the pedagogical programs and curriculums as I could. And did the same thing with my business school as well. So I didn't necessarily participate in, on-campus programs because that wasn't what I was there for. I was there to be selfishly, to selfishly take everything I could out of the schools, and it worked. It worked to the extent that today, depend on what day you're checking and what the market is doing, Shopify is the number 1 or number 2 largest company in Canada. And my ability to lead that company and to grow with the company and to requalify for my job every year, the foundation that I have, I didn't get in undergrad. In undergrad, I spent all my time selling t-shirts. In high school, I went to a really great public high school, but I didn't learn how to write well. The education that I got from law school and business school, that's what I use today to run our company. And so that is a very different approach. And I think, I think now that the legal profession, and frankly, every profession is changing, the future of work is changing, I think it's really, really important that all of you that are watching think about things slightly differently than maybe what students did 5 or 10 years ago. And I think if you do it that way, number one, you'll find your life's work a lot more rapidly, but also I think you will find more value in the education.
For sure, Harley. And just building off that, I'm going to ask 2 follow-ups. So I actually dropped out of my undergrad to build a business. And I remember in the early days of that, I was very persistent and stubborn as a young founder, and I almost had to be. And I've heard you talk a lot about your early days at Shopify, how you grew as a person, as a business person, how the quality of your decisions improved. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. There's this great, I'm gonna butcher this, but I think there are 4 laws of ecology, as they call it. I think one of the laws of ecology goes something like this. For an organism to survive, the rate of learning must be equal to or greater than the rate of change happening around them. So with the rate of change escalating at a company, in any business, in any organization, any school, as the rate of change accelerates and escalates, you now have to learn faster, learn better, and learn more. Otherwise, you fail. And that's the approach that I've taken I've been at Shopify now for about a third of my life, so about 13 years. And that is the approach I've always taken. When I came into Shopify, there were 4 engineers, basically. I was sort of the only non-engineer that walked in the door in sort of late 2009. And I really I was there full-time in early 2010, in early 2010. And my job was just solve problems, just add value. And there's some like Shopify folklore that goes around. There's a photo of me sweeping the floors one night. And it's kind of a fun little meme to have circulating, but I didn't really sweep the floors that often. But if the floors were dirty and we were having an important meeting and there was a broom sitting there, you grab the broom and you sweep the floor. And that's sort of how all of us in the early days of Shopify, the 5 of us, really thought about building the company. Forget titles, forget seniority. One of our cultural values that was on on the wall then, which is still around today, is get shit done. And so it's actually in our F1 filing, in the sort of the Form S1 filing with the SEC. We actually wrote get shit done. I think it's the first time that a word like that was put in an SEC filing, but it was true. And then over time, as we brought in more people, we're about 10,000 people now at Shopify, over 10,000 people. The same rules apply. The job of you at Shopify is to add as much value as you possibly can, given your skill set. And rather than, I think a lot of companies, it's sort of like a river stone. If you put this beautiful, shiny, spiky stone in a river, over a long period of time, that stone becomes river stone. It's much more smooth and rounded. We don't want that. We don't want you to be well-rounded. We don't want you to have, to know a little bit of a lot of things. We want you to be T-shaped at Shopify, which means we want you to go very, very deep into one area, whatever that might be. It could be marketing or sales or design or product or engineering. But we also want you to go, to know enough about everything else so that you have enough context that you can make really good decisions. And this idea of requalification every year, which is something that I believe in, and Toby too believes, that creates a culture at Shopify where everyone is deeply committed to self-introspection, to self-awareness, and to personal growth. And I think that's been a huge part of our success. I mean, there's a lot of other things that have helped with the success, But pretty much everyone at Shopify that has done well, I would say, has taken this sort of very, personal growth approach to their career, and looks at Shopify as, a place to get 10 years worth of career development every single year. And by the way, that is the reason why fundamentally the law firm environment was not for me. And by the way, this is just one law firm. One of my best friends as a partner at Stikeman Elliott, who went to the civil law program at University of Ottawa, Jeremy Skolnick, his experience at Stikeman is totally different. I mean, he absolutely loves it. He's an entrepreneur also. He built a company when he was just getting to civil law at Ottawa U. But it's far more, my experience wasn't entrepreneurial. My experience in the law firm environment was incredibly legacy based. It was whatever your year of call was, that would determine the work that you did, as opposed to what I love about entrepreneurship is it's not a pure meritocracy, but it feels much closer to a pure meritocracy than anything else I've ever encountered.
For sure, that's really interesting to hear, and you've clearly built a very intentional culture at Shopify. When you talk about T-shape, and I know McKinsey and others have a similar view on that. Just one final question for me before I turn it over to Adriana. You talked about the changing nature of the legal field, and so when you think about education today, especially when it comes to the study of law, how do you think the environment for law grads has changed as you think about careers for the future? And what could universities like the University of Ottawa be doing differently?
Well, when I got to law school, and this is nobody's fault, but the only thing I know, I encountered what were big law firms. It was like the Blake's Booze Cruise, or the Tories, cocktail party, or the Stikeman Elliott moot court competition. I was inundated with all these law firms, and so with these big law firms, and so being someone who is ambitious, and a lot of law students and business students are ambitious, it felt like that's what I was supposed to do. That the success meant getting really good grades and then going to one of these big law firms. But again, if you go back to the first part of the conversation, I wasn't there for that. I wasn't trying to get a job. Certainly, like if the goal was making money, I could have made a lot more money selling T-shirts than I could for the first 5 years of any major law firm. So that wasn't the point. The point was to gain skills. I also I think today that's a little bit more clear, at least, law students that I talk to. And, we have a fairly large legal team. Actually, I just hired a new general counsel at Shopify. Her name is Jessica Hertz. She was at Facebook and then was working for President Biden. And she just moved over to Shopify. She just joined us about a month ago. And so Jess and I talk a lot about, recruiting new lawyers and to come to Shopify. And it feels different now. It feels like there is a lot of different paths to get to whatever your definition of success might be, relative to what was the case for me or for Jess. That said, I also think that one of the most important things that I did was I was able to garner attention beyond just grades in law school. I'm sure they're still published somewhere, but I remember writing an op-ed for the Ottawa Business Journal, which is kind of strange, in my second year of law school. And then I think I wrote a couple other op-eds for the Ottawa Business Journal when I was doing my MBA. Why did I do that? One is I wanted to see if my writing was strong enough to actually withstand criticism from real publishers. And at the time, the Ottawa Business Journal was the biggest thing I can think about. And also, I wanted to just tell the world that I'm not just law student 17428, whatever my number was, that actually I'm Harley and I have an opinion about these things. And if you don't agree with my opinion, that's totally fine. But I think that given there's so much more opportunity now, I think there's an increasing requirement to set yourself apart. And whether it was the op-eds that I wrote or, Jordan Plenner and I brought what is now a fairly well-known case with the privacy commissioner against Facebook, which if any of you work at SIPC, I think there's still a lot of articles on the wall there. I actually have it on my wall here on the front page of the Ottawa Sun. It says Facebook slapped, and it's my picture and Jordan's picture there when we brought the privacy claim against Facebook. So there are ways to get attention, but you're not going to learn about that in class. That's something that you just need to sort of be a little bit more creative about. And I think that is, given the environment now, given the competitiveness of getting articling jobs, that is really necessary. Also, when I was in law school, I developed, like, if there was a great guest lecture, Harvey Strassman, I think his name was, he was a class action lawyer, or James Smith from LaBarge Weinstein. These were Delise, I forgot his first name, but there's these really interesting people that came through the law school and business school that did these guest lectures. And Ian Telfer came by to the MBA school. And when I thought, hey, these are really interesting people, everyone sort of crowded around them at the cocktail party afterwards. That was a terrible place to go and network with them. Their email addresses are fairly easy to guess. I mean, ian.telfer@gmail, try that. I don't know. I don't even know if that's his email address, or, Telfer at Goldcorp, whatever it might have been. And I just sent an email an hour after his lecture and said, you were sort of inundated at the cocktail party, but here's what I liked about what you said. Here's what I think I disagree with, to show them that I actually can think on my own. And here's actually a nice kind of Venn diagram overlap of your life and my life. You want to have a coffee? And I would say, I don't know, 11 out of 11 times that I did that, I got a response back. And in some cases, these are still people that I have deep relationships with today.
That was such helpful insight. And Adrienne is going to pick up on that. And she's also compiled some questions from our audience.
Cool.
Hi, Harley. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks, Arjun. So my first question is, the word entrepreneur implies a certain tolerance of risk, but can you tell us what it's like to operate in such a volatile market?
Great question. Hold on a second. I actually think the term entrepreneur needs to change a little bit. My wife, Lindsay, is a great entrepreneur, but for some reason, she will not call herself an entrepreneur. She just simply has this baggage around the term entrepreneur. And in her mind, it's some young dude in like a hoodie and flip-flops, kind of a la Mark Zuckerberg in Silicon Valley. And actually, I think entrepreneurs are just people that see problems and come up with creative solutions for them. I think that is a much better way to think about the practice of entrepreneurship. I'm just gonna get a throat loss into my throat's a bit sore. So I think that it's great if you are already an entrepreneur. If that's something you like doing, you like starting businesses, then I think generally it's going to be an amazing path for you. But I think a different way to think about it is, how do you use an entrepreneurial approach to solve problems in your life? And in terms of the risk model, I think that this is also where things need to evolve a bit. My grandfather started his first business in 1956. He was a Hungarian immigrant, came to Canada. They landed in Montreal during the Hungarian Revolution. And simply out of necessity, he had to become an entrepreneur because no one would hire him. He had no money, didn't speak French or English for that matter. In order for him to get that little egg stand, that was his first business, he had to leverage his entire life. He had to fundamentally remortgage everything. And if that egg stall failed, that was it. It was over for the family. That is very different starting a business in 2022. Before this call, I meet once every couple of weeks with a guy named Ben Francis, who's the founder and CEO of a company called Gymshark. I'm not sure if you know Gymshark, but they're an amazing brand. Ben started Gymshark out of his college dorm room in London, in the UK, for $29 on Shopify. And that is now a $1.5 billion brand that is competing with Nike. So two things that I think are changing. One is the cost of failure generally around entrepreneurship is trending towards zero. That is a very good thing. That means more people are invited to participate. But the second thing is, even if you haven't started businesses, it doesn't mean you can't take an entrepreneurial approach to everything you're thinking about. I mentioned the sort of the Facebook privacy claim, but let me just sort of share something that I don't think I've shared in the past, but year 3 now doing this, I can be a little bit more honest and vulnerable. Even though I never want to practice long-term, it was important to me to article. I wanted to do my article somewhere because I wanted to get called to the bar. It felt that was the right sort of journey after law school and my MBA. My grades weren't very good. And so in some ways, I needed to find something that would set myself apart. So whether it was the op-eds or it was networking really well at a level that most of my classmates were not networking, or it was bringing a very, very public, student-generated privacy claim to the Privacy Commissioner of Canada on behalf of the most interesting company in Silicon Valley, Facebook. I needed a way to get attention. All those things are examples of just using a very entrepreneurial approach to solve a problem. And that's what I mean about entrepreneurship. It's not necessarily what you do, it's sort of how you do it.
Thanks, Harley. And I personally love Gymshark, so thanks for mentioning
cool.
them. So now I'm going to pass it back to Arjun for one final question.
Sure.
Well, thanks, Adriana. And just bringing it back home, our theme for today was tomorrow's jobs, law, and entrepreneurship. And so our question for you, Harley, is what final piece of advice would you have for all the students here today on making the most of their education and choosing their own path going forward?
I think self-awareness is really it's not talked about enough. I think it's really important for everyone to figure out what they're really into. What is their thing? And by the way, it can change. It can change 100 times. But having a sense of here's how I want to spend my time is incredibly important. For me, I was very fortunate to find business creation and business building to be my thing. And so I use that lens across every class I sat in. I think I got a D in constitutional laws, like my worst grade. So I guess, on its face, that would seem like a failure. But actually, Rosemary Carensway, who was my professor, she gave me the most amazing critique of my writing style. And I write a lot now. I write, across the company. I write in the sort of the public sphere. So if I view that particular constitutional law class, or another example is accounting in Telfer. I wasn't great at accounting, but I now understand, and I have been able to understand ever since leaving school. I can look at a balance sheet or an income statement and understanding immediately what it says. So whether or not I got straight A's or I didn't, that wasn't my barometer of success, because the lens that I was using was, does this make me a better business leader? Does this make me a better entrepreneur? Now you may say, look, my thing is not entrepreneurship or business, or it's something totally different. It's climate change, or it's helping not-for-profits, or some incredible causes in the world that need to be solved. Or it may be, I just want to live a nice lifestyle. But once you use that lens and figure out what you want, what your life's work kind of is, it makes everything a lot easier. And I think, I'm now, 15 years out of school. My friends today, who I think are doing the best, not just financially, but I just mean generally, seem the most content, the happiest. They have some swagger about the decisions that they've made. They're the ones who at the earliest stage figured out, hey, this is kind of what I want to do. And it just allowed them to look at everything from that vantage point. That I think is really important. And it can change a number of times. The second thing is, I think, just to sort of take us on the entrepreneurship side for a second, being in school, if you're an entrepreneur or you want to be an entrepreneur and actually start businesses, there's no better time to do it than sitting in school. Your classmates can be your business partners or your beta testers or your first customers. Your professors can be your board of directors. There is places, there's actual, rooms you can rent to do your work in. There's so much going on in that academic environment that I think is super helpful for entrepreneurship. I'm not really sure why more people don't do it. I actually think more people should start businesses while they're students concurrently.
Well, thank you, Harley, so much for giving us your time today. And thank you for having that vision that transformed the lives of millions of people who are entrepreneurs on your platform. That's the way we need to be dreaming. And thank you for doing that yourself and for inspiring so many others along the way. You clearly took the path less traveled. I'll now turn it over to Claudia Wheeler, a second-year JD MBA student, to conclude our event.
Thank you, Arjun. And I know our time is running short here, so I'll be brief. But yes, unfortunately, it's time to have some closing remarks. So to start, Harley, thank you again for taking the time to share your story with us, showing us the value of self-actualization and most importantly, hard work. And as a small token, we have something coming to you shortly. So thank you again for everything.
Thank you.
A lot of collaboration went into this event, and I again want to take a moment to recognize the behind the scenes work of everyone involved. Specifically, I want to thank Arjun and Adriana, our esteemed moderators, as well as Krishna for all their hard work organizing this amazing event, seamlessly bringing the two programs together. So thank you to you guys, and also thank you to everyone that attended today's event. The University of Ottawa has announced its Transformation 2030 goal to increase its impact over the next decade, to tackle big problems, to disrupt, and to shape transformative solutions to real-world issues. And I think this event was a great start towards achieving that goal. So thanks again, everyone. And thank you, Harley, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.